At my baby's party, my MIL gave my husband $10 K, called me, the womb, in front of everyone, and he laughed. Then I found pre-signed divorce papers in his drawer, so I made a copy, called a number I'd been saving, and when I walked back into that house, it was supposed to be my son's first birthday. Balloons, cupcakes, family, the kind of day you imagine when you're knee-deep in diapers and sleepless nights, dreaming of someday. Instead, I stood in my own kitchen, frozen, while my mother-in-law handed my husband a white envelope and said, $10,000, sweetheart. For you, you've worked so hard this year. Then she turned to me, smiled, that tight, smug kind of smile that never touched her eyes, and said, "Nothing for you, dear, you don't really contribute. But thank you for being such a good womb." People laughed, like it was a joke. My husband included. He even squeezed her hand and said, "You always know just what to say, Mom." I felt my face burn. My name wasn't on the cake. Not even the mom part. Just happy birthday, Ben, love, Daddy, and Grandma. It was like I didn't exist. I tried to keep it together, smiled through the humiliation, poured more juice, cleaned up crumbs. The kind of quiet, invisible work that apparently doesn't count as contribution. But inside, something cracked open. I'd been swallowing her cruelty for years. My husband always told me to ignore it. But this was different. This was a declaration. After everyone left and the balloons started to droop, I went upstairs to change. He was in his office with the door half open. I heard him humming, the same hum he does when he's focused on something, like he's building a life without me inside it. That's when I saw it. The manila folder on his desk, tucked beneath a pile of mail. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I already knew. Dissolution of marriage. His name signed at the bottom. Dated 2 weeks ago. No note. No explanation. Just finality. I sat there in that chair for a long time, listening to the soft hum of the baby monitor and the faint sound of him in the shower. Every ounce of humiliation, every insult, every time he brushed off my mother-in-law's comments, it all clicked together into something clear and razor-sharp. I didn't cry, I didn't even feel sad. Just quiet, steady, because there was a number saved in my phone. A number I hadn't dialed in a year. One I kept for a reason I couldn't explain until that exact moment. I took a deep breath, made a copy of the divorce papers, and stepped outside onto the porch, the night air hitting my face like a slap. My fingers didn't even tremble as I pressed the contact and waited for the line to ring. When the voice answered, calm and familiar, all I said was, "It's time." 10 minutes later, I walked back into that house, calm, smiling, carrying the copy in my bag and a plan forming in my head. Because he thought he was ending things on his terms. He had no idea what was about to start on mine. When I met Daniel, I was 26, working as a pediatric nurse in San Diego. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who looked you straight in the eye like he was listening to your soul. I'd never met anyone who made me feel seen like that before. He'd bring me coffee during night shifts, memorize my schedule, leave little notes in my locker that said things like, "You make every day worth it." We moved fast. 6 months in, we moved into a little 2-bedroom apartment near Balboa Park. A year later, he proposed with his mother's engagement ring, a diamond so big it almost made me uncomfortable. I remember him saying, "You're part of the family now, my mom's going to love you." She didn't. From the very first dinner, she sized me up like competition. She made little digs, "Oh, you're just a nurse. Not a doctor. And you'll quit once you get pregnant anyway." Daniel laughed them off. "That's just mom being mom," he'd say. "When I got pregnant, I did quit. Morning sickness hit hard, and Daniel insisted we could afford for me to rest. You've worked enough," he said. "Just focus on the baby." His mom started visiting every week after that. She'd walk around my house like she owned it, commenting on everything. "I guess you're too tired to clean properly." Or, "When I had Daniel, I was back to work in 3 weeks. You young women are so delicate now." By the time Ben was born, she'd practically moved herself in. She insisted on organizing the nursery, then took credit for it. She even told the hospital staff, "I'm the one who made all this possible." That phrase stuck with her. She repeated it like a mantra. Daniel didn't defend me. If anything, he started echoing her tone. He'd make comments about me being emotional or not practical. He said I should be grateful that his family took care of things, as if I wasn't the one carrying, birthing, and raising our son while he worked late and traveled. I started to feel like a tenant in my own life. I'd stand in the kitchen washing bottles, listening to them talk about their family legacy, their plans, their investments, like I was just background noise. Then came the incident that should have woken me up. Ben was 6 months old. I overheard Daniel on the phone telling his mom, "She's finally stopped asking about going back to work. It's better this way. Less stress." He didn't know I was standing in the hallway, holding the baby monitor, listening to every word. That was the first time I thought, this isn't a marriage. This is management. That's when I saved the number. A woman named Lee, someone from my old life, before Daniel. A private investigator who'd once been one of the best nurses I'd worked with before switching careers. She'd helped another nurse friend during a messy custody battle. Back then, I saved her contact in my phone, just in case. Now I knew exactly what case that was for. Because if Daniel and his mother wanted to make me invisible, they were about to learn what happens when the person they erase starts watching them. Lee didn't ask questions. When I called that night after the party, she just said, "You still have access to his office computer." I told her yes. He never thought I'd look. He'd told me I wasn't tech-savvy enough to mess anything up. She laughed quietly. "Perfect. I'll send you a link. Just install it and don't tell anyone. We'll start there." That's how it began, 2 women, one betrayed and one who'd seen it all before. I followed every step she gave me. I installed a small tracker on his email that mirrored messages to a secure folder. I went through his old texts that were backed up on the cloud. I even checked his shared bank account statements. The first few days, it was nothing. Work emails, random Amazon receipts, the usual. But on day 4, something popped up that made my stomach turn, an email chain with his mother and a realtor. Subject line: transfer before filing. It was about our house. The house I'd picked out, painted, and brought our son home to. They were arranging to transfer the title into her name, temporarily before the divorce filing, to make sure I didn't get any bright ideas about marital property. The next email was worse. His mother had written, "She's too naive to realize you've been paying the mortgage from your personal account. That house is yours, not hers." And Daniel replied, "I know, she's emotionally unstable. This will be clean and quick." Emotionally unstable. I sat at my desk staring at those words until they stopped meaning anything. Lee was furious. "He's setting you up," she said. "He's going to claim you're unfit, try to take the baby, and leave you with nothing." I didn't even argue. I just felt this numb, cold understanding that my whole life had been staged, the quitting work, the isolation, even his mother's so-called help. They'd been preparing me to lose quietly. So I started watching closer. Every late-night work trip Daniel took, every time he silenced his phone when he walked into the room, I started writing it down. Dates, times, places. Lee pulled up his phone records through a contact. There was a number that kept showing up. Same area code as us, but not saved in his phone. When she traced it, the name she gave me made my hands shake: Melissa Rains. Melissa had been at the birthday party. A family friend. The one who'd hugged me too long, told me she was so proud of me for staying home. I remembered how she kept refilling Daniel's drink and whispering things in his ear. It all started connecting. The new clothes, the gym membership, the sudden interest in family law. Lee told me to play dumb, smile, pretend I didn't know, and I did for 2 whole weeks. I cooked dinner, kissed him goodnight. Let him think everything was fine while she gathered evidence, texts, bank transfers, a hotel receipt, every lie documented, every betrayal time-stamped. Then came the night I followed him. He told me he was working late. I waited until he left, got in my car, and trailed him across town. He parked outside a small boutique hotel, the kind that rents by the hour, and Melissa was already waiting in the lobby. They kissed before he even reached the elevator. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, shaking so hard my teeth hurt. That was the moment something inside me stopped breaking and started sharpening. Because they thought they were writing my ending. They didn't realize I'd just started rewriting theirs. Lee called me 2 days after I followed Daniel to that hotel. Her voice was calm, but there was this edge underneath, like she was trying not to spit the words out. "Melissa Rains isn't just some random woman," she said. "She's your husband's attorney." I froze. "What?" "She's been handling his divorce prep, the real paperwork, the one he's keeping from the courts until he's got his assets moved. She's also listed as a partner in one of his new LLCs. I sat there in silence, watching Ben on the baby monitor, his little chest rising and falling. What kind of LLC? The kind that holds rental properties. Except they're yours. All the ones his mom told you were family investments. Your name was supposed to be on them. It's not. I remember my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd throw up. He'd built a whole financial shell game with his mistress, who also happened to be a lawyer, and his mother was helping hide it. Lee sent me copies of everything she'd found. Bank transfers from his company to the LLC. Texts between him and Melissa that made it clear this wasn't new. The first message was dated 11 months ago. I was 3 months postpartum, recovering, bleeding, barely sleeping. Daniel, I feel trapped. She's not the same person. I need someone who understands me. Melissa, you deserve more. She'll never see it coming. There it was. My life reduced to a side conversation between two people planning their next move. Lee told me she'd keep digging, but I didn't wait. That night, while Daniel was out at a client dinner, I went into his office and opened his laptop again. I searched his files for Melissa's name and found a folder hidden under Taxes 2023. Inside were scanned copies of bank statements, property deeds, and emails labeled Transition Plan. The subject line of one of them stopped me cold. Custody Strategy. It was an outline written by Melissa. Step by step. File for divorce claiming emotional instability and postpartum depression. Argue mother is financially dependent and unfit for sole custody. Secure temporary custody and exclusive residence rights. Relocate child after ruling. Relocate. He was planning to take my son. I don't even remember how long I sat there before I started crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind. Just quiet, broken sobs that come from a place beyond exhaustion. The kind where you finally realize there's no misunderstanding, no fixing, no talking it out. When he came home later, he kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong. Asked if I wanted him to grab anything from the kitchen. I said no, smiled. Let him think I was still the naive housewife he'd spent years dulling down. Because that's when I decided to play his game, but smarter. The next morning, I met Lee for coffee and slid the flash drive across the table. We're not just exposing an affair, I said. We're taking down everything he built on my back. Lee grinned, slow and steady. Good, then it's time to make his empire crumble from the inside. She told me exactly what to do next. And that's when the real plan began, one that would turn his secret divorce into the most public humiliation he'd ever face. After that meeting with Lee, I stopped reacting and started strategizing. Everything I did from that point forward was deliberate, quiet, slow, precise. We made a plan in 3 stages. Stage 1, documentation. I gathered every financial document I could find, statements, deeds, receipts. I photographed everything and stored it on an encrypted drive Lee set up for me. I also installed a small camera in Daniel's office, hidden behind a stack of books. It looked like a motion sensor. Every time he sat down to work, the camera recorded. Within a week, I had footage of him and Melissa on a video call discussing the timeline. He was saying things like, "She's too tired to fight. Once Mom's name's on the title, she won't have grounds for anything." Lee told me to keep acting normal, so I did. I cooked dinner, smiled for family photos, even let his mother hold Ben while she bragged about her precious grandson. Every time she touched my shoulder, I wanted to flinch, but I didn't. Stage 2, leverage. We found something Daniel didn't want public. Turns out one of his family investments was in a company under federal audit. Lee had a contact who confirmed the company was being investigated for tax discrepancies, money that Daniel's LLCs were funneling into renovation expenses. When I saw the numbers, I realized what he'd done. He hadn't just been stealing from me, he'd been cooking books. Lee smiled when she saw my face. Perfect, you don't even need revenge, you just need to let the truth out. But I wanted both. Stage 3, the setup. Lee helped me create a mirror of his transition plan file, except this version was edited. The emails looked like they were sent by him, but they contained slightly altered details. The dates, the property amounts, the bank names, all tweaked just enough to make it look like he'd falsified documents. We planned to have those files appear in his inbox, by accident, while we sent the originals anonymously to the auditing agency and his firm's HR department. But I wanted one more layer, something personal. Something that would happen in front of everyone who'd ever looked down on me. Ben's baptism was in 2 weeks. His mother had planned the whole thing, big church, catered brunch, guest list of 80. She called it a family celebration. That was going to be my stage. Lee helped me prepare every detail. I got a small wireless projector. I set up a slideshow of family moments for after the ceremony, something she'd requested for the brunch. Only this slideshow had a different ending. The first half looked innocent. Baby photos, smiles, birthdays. Then, right when everyone would be relaxed, the screen would flicker to an email header, subject, custody strategy. Then the video from Daniel's office. His voice crystal clear. She's too tired to fight. And finally, a screenshot of the bank transfers, labeled with his and Melissa's names. Lee told me I didn't have to go through with it if I couldn't handle the fallout, but I wasn't backing down. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of him. I wasn't scared of her. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt, that slow, humiliating realization that the world sees you for what you really are. So I smiled through those last 2 weeks, held his hand in church, let his mother call me the womb one more time, because when the lights dimmed and the slideshow began, I wanted them all watching. And I wanted him to look right at me when it all fell apart. The morning of the baptism, everything went exactly as planned, or at least it started that way. The church smelled like flowers and incense, people dressed in their best, smiling for pictures. Daniel was in a tailored navy suit, all charm and ease, shaking hands and laughing like the proud father he pretended to be. His mother was everywhere, giving orders, taking credit, acting like the queen of the family dynasty. She even leaned over to me and said, "You clean up well, dear. Don't make any emotional scenes today, all right?" I smiled. Just smiled. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception hall, linen tables, gold centerpieces, champagne for the adults. My projector was set up in the back, ready. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. Lee had confirmed everything was working. She'd texted me 15 minutes earlier. Showtime. When the lights dimmed, the first photos started rolling, Ben's first steps, his messy birthday cake, Daniel holding him in the hospital. The crowd oohed. My mother-in-law dabbed at her eyes. Then the screen flickered. And the subject line appeared, Custody Strategy Final Version. A ripple went through the room. Daniel's head snapped up. His mother froze. Then came the video clip, Daniel in his office, leaning back in his chair, saying those words. "She's too tired to fight." His voice echoed through the room, followed by the email chain and the screenshots of his and Melissa's messages. Gasps, whispers. A few people stood up. His mother turned crimson. Daniel lunged for the projector, shouting, "Turn that off, that's fake, it's fake." But it wasn't, and everyone knew it. I stood there, holding Ben in my arms, watching his face fall apart in front of everyone who'd once thought I was lucky to have him. It should have been perfect. It should have ended right there. But as the crowd broke into chaos, my phone buzzed. A message from Lee, "We need to talk, something's off, don't leave with him." Before I could respond, Daniel grabbed my arm. "You think you're clever?" he hissed. "You have no idea what you've done." His hand was shaking, but not from fear, from anger. "You've ruined everything." Then he stormed out, dragging his mother behind him while she shouted about defamation. I stood there, numb, while people whispered around me. My plan had worked, but Lee's message sat in my stomach like ice. When I called her later that night, her voice was tight. "You didn't tell me about his mom's trust accounts." "What?" "They're not just joint. They're guardianship accounts. For Ben. But the weird thing is they were set up under her name, not Daniel's. And there's another beneficiary listed, a female born in 2020. I froze. Ben was born in 2022. "That's what I thought," she said quietly. "And the mother listed on that record isn't you." I couldn't breathe. "You mean?" "Yes, he has another child, a daughter, Melissa's." The room started spinning. Lee kept talking, something about hidden transfers, travel receipts, the timing, but all I could hear was that one sentence echoing in my head. He didn't just betray me. He'd started another family. While I was carrying his son, bleeding for him, loving him, he was already building a replacement. That's when everything clicked, his mother's constant comments, the money shifting, the way he'd treated me like a placeholder. I wasn't the womb. I was the trial run. And he and his mother had already moved on to their next project. But now I knew exactly how deep their rot went. And for the first time, I saw the revenge not just as payback, but as protection. Because now it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my son. I met Lee in person the next morning. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, a folder clutched in her hand like it was something toxic. We sat in her car, parked behind a coffee shop, rain hitting the windshield hard enough to blur everything outside. She didn't waste time. "You were right to call me when you did," she said quietly. "Because this wasn't just about a divorce or an affair, it was about money, big money." She opened the folder and showed me a set of documents, trust agreements, estate plans, legal memos. My name wasn't on a single one of them, but Daniel's was, his mother's too, and one line, highlighted in yellow, made my blood run cold. Clause 4C. Upon the legal dissolution of marriage to the maternal party, sole custodianship and trustee rights to minor heir, Benjamin, shall transfer to the paternal family. I blinked. That means they were planning to take Ben, Lee nodded. And not just for custody, for control. Your son is the heir to a family trust worth about $12 million. It activates when he turns 18. His mother, you, only has any rights to it while married to Daniel. Once divorced, you're cut out completely. And guess who remains trustee? His mother. Lee nodded again. Exactly. They needed you to give birth. They needed an heir. That's why she called you the womb. It wasn't just an insult, it was literal. My stomach turned. All the little details started clicking into place. The way his mother pushed me to quit my job, to stay home, to depend on Daniel. The way she'd insisted on choosing my doctor, on managing my medical paperwork. Even how she'd made sure I signed that family insurance agreement after Ben was born. It was all to make sure I had no power, no legal footing. Just the baby, the asset. Lee looked me dead in the eyes. They were going to take him, relocate him like that file said, and once that trust activated, you'd never see him again. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the rain streaking down the window, realizing that every kind smile, every helpful comment from that woman had been part of a plan to breed control. Daniel wasn't cruel by accident. He'd been raised for this, to use people, to manipulate, to protect the family's legacy. Lee went on, her voice low. That other child, Melissa's daughter, she's named in a new trust draft, dated just last month. The plan was to replace you and merge the assets once they took full custody of Ben. They'd already started paperwork to shift the trust if anything happened to you. The air left my body. If anything happened to me, Lee met my eyes, you were being erased, legally and literally. It's not a stretch to think they might have tried to make it look like a breakdown, or worse. I sat there shaking, my whole world rearranging itself into something colder, sharper. Daniel hadn't just stopped loving me. He'd never loved me at all. He'd targeted me. Picked someone with no powerful family, no money, no backup. Someone who'd look good in photos, who could be shaped into the perfect, silent mother. His mother had chosen me. She'd watched me and approved like I was a broodmare being inspected. And now that I'd served my purpose, they were ready to transition me out. That word, transition, it kept echoing in my head. The same word he'd used in that secret folder. Transition plan. I realized then that this wasn't a love story gone wrong. It was an operation. And if they thought they could quietly destroy me and keep my son, they were about to learn how dangerous someone becomes when they've got nothing left to lose. When Lee handed me the subpoena packet, I realized how quiet revenge can look when it works. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting in courtrooms, no smashed windows, just paper and precision. We'd spent weeks letting them self-destruct. The altered emails, the anonymous tip to the auditors, the photocopied trust clauses we'd leaked to the family lawyer who owed me a favor. Everything funneled into a single, unavoidable mess that left them with no tidy exit. The week after the baptism, audits were opened. Daniel's firm pulled him into an emergency meeting. His mother called her accountant until midnight and then called me to ask, in a voice I barely recognized, if I was okay. I told her yes. It was true, I had never felt clearer. Lee arranged for me to serve notice myself. I walked into Daniel's office with Ben in his stroller and the folder of evidence under my arm. He stared at me like I'd sprouted horns. Melissa showed up, sharply dressed, the professional mask she wore like armor. They both tried to pass it off as a misunderstanding, a smear campaign, until the auditor's representative walked in behind me and set a stack of documents on his desk. The firm froze when they saw the internal emails. The HR director turned pale as the payroll irregularities were read out loud. Daniel sputtered, tried to blame contractors and accounting errors. But when I slid the original, dated custody strategy file across the desk, the one I'd never altered, and asked, politely, where he planned to relocate our son, his answers dissolved into stammers. What followed was legal theater. His mother's trust was put on hold by the court pending full review. The auditors flagged transactions that were, at the very least, suspicious. Melissa's conflicts of interest were exposed to her firm. She was suspended pending investigation. Daniel's divorce filing, voided by procedural errors, filed in bad faith, the judge said, once she saw the custody memo he'd drafted. But the part that felt like the real undoing wasn't the financial fallout. It was watching the social avalanche. The mother who'd called me, the womb, stopped being invited to charity luncheons. The family friends who'd smiled with polite teeth at every party started whispering, then stopped answering texts. Daniel's pride, the cushion that let him treat me like a placeholder, collapsed under the weight of his own paper trail. I didn't humiliate him in public with slander or spectacle. I let the truth do that. I testified in court with my face steady, reading aloud his own words when asked. I showed up every hearing sober and prepared. I brought witnesses who confirmed his absences when Ben needed him. I brought the nurse who'd watched him ignore parental classes. I brought the hospital intake forms that his mother had insisted I sign, ones that tied her to decisions she wanted to own. In the end, custody was settled the way a judge sees these things, with the child's best interest in mind, not with the greedy ledger of a family fortune. I retained primary custody. The court placed financial safeguards around the trust, with independent trustees appointed until Ben is an adult. His mother lost trustee privileges. Melissa lost her position at the firm. Daniel agreed to therapy, to supervised visits, and to a financial settlement that left most of his secret holdings frozen. People asked me later if I felt vindicated. I told them something simple, relieved. Revenge had been a tool to claw us back from erasure. But the real victory was walking out of that courtroom with my son on my hip and knowing the next years would be ours, not somebody else's inheritance plan. I still have scars, the memory of that cake without my name, the echo of them calling me a womb. But I also have a son who knows his mother loves him beyond property deeds and line items. I sleep better now. I laugh more. I work again on my terms. The last time I saw Daniel, he was standing on the sidewalk outside the courthouse, a small, hollow figure watching me wheel Ben away. He mouthed something, sorry, maybe, but I only waved. Goodbye, I thought, and Ben kicked his feet against the stroller, oblivious, delighted, loud, very much alive and very much mine. I turned the corner and felt something simple and bright, closure. And then I chuckled, because if they'd ever wanted a womb, they'd have to RSVP first.